If you pay attention to our cultural conversation at all, you'll notice many trends. Iran is the biggest threat on the world stage. Putin is a dictator who wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union. The credit card companies just want you to be able to travel more and get money back on your groceries. Palantir putting together a centralized database of everything about you is for your safety. Marijuana is far less addictive than nicotine. The thing that all of them have in common, they're not true. They're lies, because China is the biggest threat our country faces on the world stage. Israel is the nation that is currently in the process of massive cultural expansion and intrusion on foreign soil via ethnic cleansing. The credit card companies want to enslave you in debt by making you a permanent consumer and renter. Palantir and big tech generally seeks to control you via your own information. Nicotine makes you alert. Marijuana makes you stupid. These are all easy enough narratives to dispense with if given enough thought and careful consideration. You can mostly look them all up on the internet and either affirm or debunk them at will. There is really not much effort at all from anyone that's involved in this. You just have to be a little bit curious, and the story will most likely give way on its own. So why is that? Why is it that, even though all of these stories we're constantly told are foolhardy and stupid, that they're still widely believed and accepted as fact? And perhaps more importantly, why is it that when they're pointed out as not being fact, the people who expose them as such are repeatedly slandered, told to shut up, and to do as they're told by a higher, more established authority and order? The reason is the second thing that all of these narratives have in common. These narratives, to a T, are directed from older people to younger people. This is not an ageist statement to make at all. In fact, it's the inverse. A dire indictment on our older generations, the ones who have been steering this country and its culture off of a cliff for the longest time. It's time we examine this specific generational difference and why it matters. And I'll start by saying the obvious. Respect your elders. Do not demean them for the sake of demeaning them. Do not say that they do not know anything, that their wisdom is insufficient for the time. More than likely, it is not, particularly if they are people that have your best interest at heart, like your parents, for example, or other mentors that you have in your life. Treat them with respect, because you know that's how you want them to treat you. However, given this posture, we've allowed another troublesome narrative to persist, one that is doing far more harm than it is good. And that narrative is the following. Gen Z is a quote-unquote lost generation. That, due to body blow after body blow of a series of most unfortunate events, we need to throw the Gen Z baby out with the bathwater, salt the earth behind us, and move towards the next generation. They're too far gone, we've heard over and over again. Best just to leave them to self-immolate in the background. They're beyond help, beyond saving. Don't look back. Nothing to see here. And the narrative around Gen Z is not without reason, however. There are many incompetent and stupid people in my generation, ones that have made very public asshats of themselves over and over again for seemingly more and more foolish reasons. And this gives me no joy in reporting this, by the way, but the facts remain the same. Yet the facts also remain the same, that this is the same in every generation. Yes, we're more public now due to the advancement of technology and the changing of parenting styles and structures, sure. Those things certainly have made an impact. But to say that we're too far gone, that we have nothing to contribute, that's not something a healthy society does at all. A healthy society helps its young people, particularly in times of difficulty. To not do so is, by definition, to commit cultural suicide. Unfortunately, this was a lie that I bought into for a very long time, up until very recently. And the reasoning behind this was that I was brainwashed by the same group of people. Older generations who didn't want to get off their high horse and do something to help people like my friends, who I saw descend into things like addiction, apathy, failure to launch syndrome, and suicide. This is not to outsource any of the blame. We are all sovereign people, after all. But even so, I found the lack of support and even condescension and condemnation at its worst points to be incredibly disturbing. The amount of devastation and pain that could have been avoided was nothing short of massive. Could additional help have prevented the troubles of Gen Z totally? Of course not. But is something almost always better than nothing? Of course it is. And it wasn't just me that bought this lie, unfortunately. Our entire culture seemingly did, tossing Gen Z aside to suffer in their squalor while they did nothing to stop it. The consequences will be with us forever. We know the statistics. We've seen the data. Things like our mental health, financial state, debt levels, and overall optimism towards life itself are in the toilet, or so it may seem. The picture, one would think, would be bleak. But thankfully, like all the other narratives we've been discussing, the talking points around Gen Z fit the bill perfectly. It's a lie. In fact, it's not even remotely true, because Gen Z is not going down the tubes. We are not falling from the sky. We are not a lost generation. All of these trends, particularly of recent, show the exact opposite, actually, a remarkable upswing in almost every key area that matters. Particularly if you've been exposed to this commonly touted Gen Z narrative, you may doubt this, and you should. But if you look closely enough, you will see exactly what I see. A generation on fire to do the right things and to do them often. This is a generation chomping at the bit to right the ship, to do things differently than before, to chart a new course for our culture. But yet the narrative around Gen Z's complete and total collapse still exists. And to give the devil his due once again, there is a reason for it. Dave Ramsey, one of my favorite people in the world, has a great perspective to share on this. Ramsey has been very vocal on Gen Z, both within his massive company and to whom he provides financial advice for. He has gotten to know them very well and has come up with the following conclusion. Gen Z is a generation of extremes. They are either awful or the best people that he has ever seen and worked for. Gen Z, like myself, is filled, like I said, with extremists. We swing hard for the things that we want, whether it's starting an AI company or binging porn in our mom's basement. We don't take half measures. We go all the way in whatever that thing is. I know just as many abject winners as I do abject failures in this regard, and it's a remarkable thing to watch, to be honest. The polarity inside my compatriots is something to behold, truly. But the important thing, the thing we're going to be devoting this entire episode to diving deeper into, is that the best of Gen Z is winning. And to prove this point out even further, there is even an increasingly larger and larger pile of specific cultural evidence that this is happening. It may be a fringe theory now, and perhaps it should be, but in the long run, it won't, because there's simply too much to avoid seeing. I have dubbed this phenomenon the Gen Z comeback. The reason is that with every cultural headwind in our face, we have persisted and come out on the other side stronger. We've been written off essentially since we were born. The dot-com bubble, the terror wars, the '08 financial crisis, Trump, COVID, AI, you name it. That's a remarkable amount of change for one generation to sustain going into their formative years. But yet we have sustained it. And in the face of all of that, as does any woman they go through adversity, we have come out stronger. No one said it was possible, and yet here we are. This is an absolutely wild thing to witness, and an absolutely wonderful thing to witness. But for now, we must discuss what's going on underneath the surface. Why is this happening at all? What exactly is causing this? In my view, there are three reasons as to why the Gen Z comeback has happened, and happened as aggressively as it has happened. There are many things downstream that are both causing and being affected by this, things that we will touch on more and more as we venture further down this rabbit hole. But when boiled down, I believe these to be the three most important factors in the rise of Gen Z to becoming the most redemptive generation America has seen in more than a century. First, Gen Z has overseen not just the failure, but the systemic failure of all of our institutions during the span of their lifetime. Long rotting away, America's institutions across all spheres of life, from education to medical to political, have been slowly dribbling into decline. Almost no one, out of either hubris, ignorance, or pride, called this out. No one attempted to fix any of the problems that were clearly present. Better to just ignore them, to leave them be. Unfortunately for Gen Z, they all seemed to break simultaneously when they came of age. Everyone was caught totally with their pants down. When things break, it always hits the most vulnerable first and the hardest. That's why poor people die when the economy tanks, for example. They're already stuck in a bad spot. They can't protect themselves any longer from getting hit where it hurts when it hurts the most. Two examples stick out when it comes to Gen Z specifically. The first is social media. Social media, once a basic tool for catching up with old friends, became an addictive and algorithmic disaster by the time it was distributed to Gen Z. We took it in hook, line, and sinker, and became the first addicts in the social media age. It rotted our brains, destroyed our social capabilities, and isolated us from both our feelings and each other. We've seen no institutional support on remotely trying to solve this problem. Everything done from our technocratic overlords has, to the contrary, made the problem far worse. And the second is the COVID pandemic. Many older generations still don't quite comprehend just how much was stolen from Gen Z during the pandemic. Graduations, proms, senior bar crawls, nights out with friends, 21st birthdays. These are seminal coming-of-age moments for young people. Gen Z, almost to a person, missed out on at least one of them, if not multiple of them. They have not forgotten that, because they can't. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, they have seen that largely all of the quote-unquote precautions we took during the pandemic resulted in nothing substantive at all. It was a lose-lose scenario for young people, and we fell for it completely. The aftermath of these two and all the other institutional failures directed at Gen Z, the complete dissolution of trust between Gen Z and any institutional force, no matter what it was. Put simply, we don't trust anybody or anything anymore. So given that, we're willing to question everything, from what kind of chemicals are in our water to what type of foreign aid we're giving to countries not named the United States of America. There are no more sacred cows anymore. They've all been slaughtered. Second, Gen Z is completely exhausted from the fire hose of information we've been forced to drink from quite literally all of our lives. This goes far beyond social media, by the way. Throughout the entirety of our lives, we've been encased in a glass menagerie of information, so ensconced in everything that it has gone all around us that we can barely see 2 feet in front of our faces anymore. We can't find an off switch because there was never one built in the first place. Even Steve Jobs admitted that. Because of this, Gen Z was the quickest generation to wring out the towel of our information industrial complex. The vast majority of older Americans are still working their way through just how much communication has changed. The generation under us, Gen Alpha, is too busy creating new information out of nothing with generative AI and things like it. We've seen both sides of that spectrum and want nothing to do with either. But this has led to something remarkable. Due to Gen Z being sick of all the information thrown at them and not wanting anything new added to what is already existing, we have, largely, worked out what is most important about our information. What does information exist for? What is the point of having information in the first place? Why do we consume things? Why do we want to find things out, to know why things are the way that they are? And Gen Z has found their answer to this question. The things that give the most meaning are always the ones that are traditional and value-driven. Gen Z is the most conservative generation in recorded history. It is also the most on fire for religion that we've seen in a very long time. We don't want to be ballers. We don't want to be poor. We simply want to be. We like, want what we want, and want everyone else to stay away from us while we do so. That's the American dream, which is why Gen Z has wisely curated everything that isn't that out of the picture. Third, because of both of the above factors, they're not waiting on anyone to save them. They're acting. They have all the information that they need to create a meaningful life for themselves. They know that the institutions of old will not get them close to that vision. They know that if they want a good life, they will have to make it happen for themselves, by themselves. And to their credit once more, they're acting on it. And this is, in my view, the core difference between millennials and Gen Z. The core mistake of Gen Y was that they did not act. They still thought that the institutions that cared for the prior generations, the economy, the universities, etc., would take care of them. They were wrong and got clapped for it. They got frustrated and upset, reasonably so, which led to the birth of the woke movement and all the evil that seeped from it. But no one could survive this way for long, which is why Gen Z is winning and why millennials are losing. The reason this is so is because in anything, a victim mindset can and most likely is fatal for anyone who adopts it. A victim mindset has never led anyone to achieve anything, which is why Gen Z is doing so well. They know they have their agency and are using it to their advantage to craft the lives that they want. That's what Gen Z is doing now, crafting a new world filled with newer, more optimistic lives for themselves. The question then becomes, what will the results be if this continues, if Gen Z remains unimpeded in their pursuit of a new version of the old quote-unquote good life? What will the ultimate consequence of this be? The only cure for a declining civilization is an active population. We haven't had one in America since the end of World War II, when the greatest generation came back from their various theaters to build the world that would later be destroyed by the baby boomers. That decay has remained unimpeded since that point, with only Gen Z in the way to stop it from completely decimating all that our forefathers built. What could this look like if fully actualized? More value-driven companies, how about, that define corporate culture, that are anti-family and anti-values. More families in general, with plenty more children than what we're currently having. More religious faith, including conferences and picnics and all the things that invite more people in to experience the magic of what God can do for them. More than anything else, more values and what they can do for people, no matter who they are or where they come from. Everything good is downstream of a good value system. Gen Z can be the generation, if they press in hard enough, that shows the world that truth once more. Everyone should be rooting for this, by the way. There's no reason not to. We've seen what the alternative is like. It has done nothing to us but drive us further into hedonism, meaninglessness, and squalor. There is nothing advantageous about a valueless culture, about one that doesn't make room in its society for the permanent things, the things that create abundance and joy for anyone who has the courage to chase them. But not everyone is. This is a very telling thing to witness. It is a very telling thing indeed to see the resentment, and dare I say the hatred, coming from our institutions and older generations towards Gen Z for striving to correct the wrongs that have been so polluted our society. Why are they doing this? Simply put, they're jealous. They're jealous that they aren't the ones getting the credit for fixing it, and for people actually finding out that the fix is in on them for bringing out this heinous attitude in the first place. It's not healthy for the old to hate the young. It's even worse, and I dare to say that fatalistic, for the old to hate the young. But they do, in more ways than most would care to admit. It's a shame, and shameful. Gen Z still has a long way to go. There's a lot of mess that needs to be cleaned up. The good news is that we are already so far ahead of where we once were. We have a tremendous opportunity here to be what King Randall dubs the Joshua generation. The story of the redemptive heir to the throne, the one who can finally carry us into the promised land that would give us what our divine destiny promised us. For all of our sakes, we best hope that conclusion comes to bear.